Hi everyone, in today's tutorial I'm going to show you how to create a surreal terrain interior in Blender. We'll be modeling all the components using the mirror and array modifiers to speed up the process, adding lighting, some grass and flowers for a surreal and dreamy look, and finally we'll finish it off with some post-processing. So let's get started. So let's first begin with the door. So we can just open a plane, so Shift A and Mesh and Plane. And we can rotate it on the x-axis, so R, X and 90, and we can make this a bit longer, so let's go to edit mode and S and Z. And let's make one loop cut here with Ctrl R and move this down. Select this vertex and Ctrl B and V. And now you see we have an n-gon here, so we have 5 vertices, but we need to make this 4. So let's make one more vertex here, so we can select these both and right click and subdivide, and let's select this one and Shift S and cursor to select it and the other one, and let's change our period key to 3D cursor. So just pressing your period key and 3D cursor, or you can go up here and change it here, and now you can just press S, C and 0, and we can select these both by holding Shift and J. Also apply the scale, so Ctrl A and scale. And let's select this edge and X and dissolve edges. And we can select everything and right click and subdivide it. And now we can just select these faces here and press I to insert. And let's just delete them, so X and faces. Let's go back to our median point and S and X to make it a bit slimmer. And let's go to face select and we can select this face and X to delete it. And let's select these both edges and S and Z. And now we can just select everything and E to extrude it to give it some thickness. And for that, let's go up here to select and select sharp edges. So Ctrl B to bevel it. And let's give it one segment. And we can come here to this window and change the miter outer to arc. And right click and shade smooth. And as you can see, it doesn't look this right, so we have to connect some vertices. And let's make one more loop cut here. And we can connect this one to this one by pressing J. Let's also make one here. And let's connect these both. And let's also do this on the other side. So we can select these both and J. And also these ones. And let's go here and we can do the same thing. So let's make one loop cut here. And we can select these both and J to connect them. And don't forget it to do the same on the other side. So J to connect it. And let's do the same here. So one loop cut here and also one here. And we can select these both and connect them. And also on the other side. And same here. So one loop cut and also one loop cut here. And once we have that, we can add a subdivision. So Ctrl 2. And we can select these faces here. And Shift S and cursor to select it. So Shift A and curve and a path. And let's rotate it, so R, Y and 90. And we can make it a bit smaller, so just make it smaller. And we can come here to the curve properties. And let's go to geometry and bevel, and we can give it some bevel. And I think these corners should be a bit more round, so what we can do, we can just select these ones. So by holding Alt and click it. And let's go double G. And we can move it to here, and also this one. And move it a bit down. And we can also make these lines straight, so we can go to period and median point and S, X and 0 and S, Z and 0, and also up down here. And we can select this edge and double G and just move it a bit up, and also this one, so double G. And let's make the same thing here, so I can just select it and move it to about here, and also this one. We can select these faces here, so you can press your C and you have the circle select, and right click to remove it, and I to insert it. And now we can just extrude it inwards, so E to extrude it, so just a tiny bit, and we can press I again, so we have more sharper face here. And let's make one more loop cut here, so it is not too round. You can also make one here. And now we can make a door, so Shift A and the plane again. And let's just rotate it. And let's also bring our cursor back to the world origin. So cursor to world origin. And now we can just make the door. So R, Z and 90. And we should make it a bit longer. So S and Z. and also a bit on the y-axis. And let's make one cut here. And we can bevel this cut like this with Ctrl B. And let's go to Face Select and X and Faces. Let's apply the scale, so Ctrl A and Scale, and you can select everything and subdivide it a couple of times. So we can make 2 loop cuts and select these faces again. And I to Inset and X and Faces. And now we can just select everything and give it some thickness. And now we also need to bevel it again, so we can go to our Edge Select and select Sharp Edges. And let's give it a tiny bevel with Ctrl B and 1 segment. And let's give it some more loop cuts, so 1 here. And we can join these 2. And also on the other side. And 1 loop cut here. And it's the same process up here. And right click and shade smooth. And let's add a subdivision with Ctrl 2. And we forgot to make these ones here, so let's make them as well. And once we have that, we can unhide it again. And let's select these edges and double G to move them a bit. So we can go Alt and Z to go to X-ray mode. And let's just select these half here. And holding Shift to select everything, and X and vertices. And we can select this half here and delete it. And let's add a mirror to this half. And you see the origin is in the wrong place, so we have to select these here. And also this one. And Shift S, cursor to select it. And right click and set origin to 3D cursor. So double G to move this a bit, and also this one. And let's do the same process here. And let's move this mirror up here and Ctrl A to apply it. And now we can move the origin back to this place, so we can select these faces. Also this one here. So let's select this face and this one. And Shift S, cursor to select it. And right click, set origin to 3D cursor. And we can make a mirror again. And let's move the origin a bit more to the left side, so we have a bigger gap here. So let's go to this option here and origin, and let's press G and Y, and we can move it just a tiny bit like this. And let's go back and we can move this a bit more in place, also this one here. And we can also move this to the door here. And let's also select the door, and we can select these faces here. So let's just select this face. So let's go to 1, and we can select all of these faces here. And we can E to extrude it, and right click and G and Y. And let's make it a bit longer and smaller. And we also have to move it to the front, to here. So Shift D and G and Y, and we can move it to here. And we also have to mirror it, so let's press Ctrl M and Y. And next we can make the walls. So let's go to Shift S and cursor toward origin. And we can select the plane again and R, Y and 90. And let's move it to here. And let's make it bigger and also on the Y-axis. And Ctrl A and apply the scale. And we can select everything and just subdivide it. And let's subdivide it one more time. And it looks a bit too small, so we can select everything and make it a bit bigger. And let's select all of these ones here and move them a bit more down. And let's just make a tiny gap here. Something about this. And you can select these faces here. And let's press I and X and faces. And we can select everything and E to extrude it. Let's give it the same thickness as the door. We can also use the mirror again, so we can go to 3 and to 1 and X-ray mode by pressing Alt and Z. And we can just select these half here and X and vertices. And let's add a mirror again. And you see the gap is not correct. So we have to select all of these vertices by pressing Alt and click it. And Shift S and cursor to select it. Right click and set origin to 3D cursor. Go to Edge Select and select Sharp Edges. And Ctrl B to give it a tiny bubble with one segment, right click, shade smooth, and a subdivision. Or let's first connect these vertices and then add a subdivision. And once we have that, we can just select these edges and double G. We can also match the same height so that it looks even. So we can just select this one and Shift S, cursor to select it, and then this one, and let's press period again and change it to 3D cursor, and SC and 0, and now it has the same height. And also same here, so we can select this one, cursor to select it, and then these ones, and S, Y, and 0, and also here. And now we can apply the mirror, so Ctrl A to apply the mirror modifier. And next we can make the seeds, so Shift A, mesh, so let's add a plane. Let's go to edit mode and change it again to median point, and let's make it smaller. And we can select this edge, and let's go to side view and E to extrude it. And let's bring it a bit up and a bit to here. And also like this. And let's select everything, Alt and E, and extrude faces along normals. And you can give it some thickness, even offset. And you can give it some subdivision. And now we have to give it some loop cut. So let's give it one loop cut here. And Ctrl B. And also one here. And maybe one more here. And one here. Right click and shade smooth. And now we can give it one more loop cut here, and we can just select these edges and move them a bit so we have a better shape. And we can also select these ones here and G and Z. And you can also move these more a bit inwards, and we can also move this on the normals, so we can move this a bit more in. And also let's move these ones more. And let's go to 7, and we can just place it to here. And S and X to make it a bit bigger. And let's move this a bit more here. And we can bring it more to the back. So just matching it a bit. So let's select this wall, and we can bring it a bit more something like this. And we can also select this face up here. So let's go to 7, and we can select this face. And also these corners here. And we can move this a bit more down, so G and Z to move it a bit. And we also have to make this a bit longer, so we have to match it to this door. So let's select the door and the face and cursor to select it. And we can select this wall here and these faces. And you can press Ctrl plus to grow the selection. And let's change it back to our 3D cursor and SC and 0. And I think the door is a bit too thick, so we can make this slimmer. So S and X. We can also select this one and delete it. And let's move this wall a bit to the side. And we can go to toggle view and we can select these faces here. So let's go to Ctrl 1 and these faces. Also these ones. And let's go back and we can move this a bit. So E and right click and G and Y. And let's go to edit mode and X-ray mode and to 1. And we can select this half and just delete it. And let's add a mirror again. Let's make it above the subdivision and we can apply it. So Ctrl A to apply, so that we have a bit more like a wall here. And now we can just select the seed and we can add a array modifier. And you see it is in the wrong direction, so we can make this 0 and this one 1. And let's make this -1. And now we can just add a couple of seeds. Or we can also make these a bit more bigger on the y-axis, so about here. And we can make 2 less. And let's press Shift S and cursor toward origin. And we can add a plane again, and we can make it longer. So let's go to 7 and we can bring it to here. And S and X. So to make a ground here. And let's bring it a bit up. And let's make the rest, so we can make the ceiling. And we can select this wall. And we can select all of these faces here. Duplicate it, so Shift D and P selection. and we have this face, and we can go to edit mode and select everything. Let's go to 1 and we can extrude it a bit. Let's extrude it one more time, and G and X. We can also rotate it a bit, and we can bring it a bit down, and E again, and G and X. And let's make S, X and 0 so that is straight. And next we can add a mirror, so let's add a mirror, and you see it's the wrong direction, so let's change it. And as you can see, the origin is in the middle, so we have to change it. So leave these as selected and Shift S and cursor to selected, and right click and set origin to 3D cursor. And we also have to enable the clipping, and let's bring it above the subdivision. We have to bring the origin to the middle of the ground, so let's make Shift S and cursor to selected. Let's select the ceiling and right click, set origin to 3D cursor, so E to merge it. So let's go to 1, and I think we can make this a bit higher, and let's enable our proportion editing and move this a bit up. We also can make one more loop cut so it is a bit more rounded, and let's move this also. We also can select this edge by holding Alt and click it, and double G to move it a bit, and we can also move these a bit. And we also have to select these faces and delete them, so let's select these and Ctrl plus to grow the selection, and X and faces. And we also have to convert the curve back to a mesh, so right click and convert to mesh, and we can select these both and Ctrl J to merge them, and we can just Shift D and G and Y to move it, and let's mirror it again, so Ctrl M and Y. And we also have to make these holding bars here, so we can make the cursor to here and select the curve again, so a path, and let's rotate it, and let's bring it up and give this some thickness, maybe something about this. And we also have to make one more here, so let's select this one and cursor to selected, and let's add a cylinder, and we can change it to 24, that should be enough, or even a 16, and let's rotate it and make it smaller, and we can adjust the length, and you can press S and Shift and Y so it is not scaling on the Y axis, and we can bring it to here, and we can also mirror it, so we can just make a loop cut in the middle and X-ray mode, and let's select all of these vertices and X and vertices, and we can add a mirror, and we can select this face and X and faces, and let's select this vertex down here in the middle and Shift S, cursor to selected, and we can select this whole edge by pressing Alt and click it. We can go to side view by pressing 3, and let's go to the spin. We have to go to this tool here, and here we can also change the axis, so let's change it to X. Now we can just drag it, so we can just make it something like this, and let's go down here and -90. And also let's change the steps, so we don't need this many, so maybe just 4 is enough, or 3. And here's the center, we can also change that, so let's make the Z to something like this, that should be enough. And right click and shade smooth, and we can go back, RY -90. We can go to edit mode and go out of the spin tool, and we can just extrude it on the X axis, so let's extrude it to the wall. And let's also disable the mirror of the ceiling so we can see it better. Select this one and make another one, so we can move it to here, and this should be in between, so we can move this. So let's select this again, and let's go to toggle view, and we can select the plane, and let's make it smaller and move it a bit up, and S and Y, and we can select these both edges, and S and X, and E and Z, and S and X. Let's also make one here and move it just a bit more up. Let's move these a bit more together. Shift S, cursor to selected, and we can select a cylinder, and let's make this smaller and longer. And we can select this one and select everything, and Alt and E extrude faces along normals, and Ctrl 2 to give it subdivision. And we have to give it one more loop cut here, and also one here, and also one in the middle, and Ctrl B to bevel it, and right click, shade smooth, go to edit mode and select this face, cursor selected, and you can select the plane, and let's rotate it and make it smaller, and we can make it a bit to here, R and Y, and we can select this edge and extrude it and extrude it again, so G and Z, move it to here, and let's give it one more loop cut and just shape this, and a subdivision, and we can give it one more loop cut here and one more here, and also one in the middle, and Ctrl B to bevel it, and let's select everything and Alt and E, extrude faces along normals, and we can give it some thickness, and we can select a curve and circle and rotate it, and let's go to front view, and we can just place it to here. And what we also can do, we can select this vertex and Shift S, cursor selected, and change it to 3D cursor, and that way we can scale it like this. And let's also give it some thickness. And we also can make this a bit bigger so that it fits. And we can just select this edge and move this a bit, also this one. We can select these 3 objects and make them smaller, and we can bring these down, and let's select everything and let's make this smaller. Next we can convert it back to a mesh, and we don't want the resolution to be the size, so we can set it to 8 maybe, and right click and convert to mesh, and let's also apply the subdivision, so one level is enough, and Ctrl A to apply it also here, so just one is enough. And we can select all of these objects and Ctrl J to join them, right click and shade smooth. We can also make one more loop cut in the middle, so we have a better shape. And next we can just add a array modifier, and this is the wrong direction, so we can change it again to our Y direction. And let's move this a bit more to the Y, to here, and we can make some more, maybe not this much, so we can make a bit more, and also be careful that these are not intersecting. And let's also make one more bar here, and we can bring the cursor to here and make the same process, so just a cylinder and R, Y and 90, and just scale it. And we can go to toggle view and select this face and delete it, and we can select this vertex in the middle and Shift S, cursor selected, and now we can just select this whole edge and go to spinning tool, and you have to go back to this tool here and rotate it, so Y is right, and you can just drag it to here and make the steps a bit less, so maybe 3 is enough, and also the radius, maybe 4 looks better, and we can change the angle to 90, and let's go back and E and Z, and you can make this longer to here, and right click, shade smooth, and let's bring this a bit more out so we can see it from the side, and we can select this face here and E to extrude it, and we can select it and move it to the other side, and now we can just join these two, so Ctrl J, and we have one object, and you can also join these ones, so Ctrl J, and you have one object. And let's also convert these back, so let's go to curve, and we can select 8 and this one as well, and right click and convert to mesh, and also this one, and we can just join them by Ctrl J. And let's build the train. So what we can do, we can bring this back, and now the origin has to be in the middle of this ground, so everything is mirrored on the other side. We can select this object, and let's select the ground, and we can Shift S, cursor selected, and the seeds, and let's add a mirror modifier, and right click and set origin to 3D cursor, and now we have it mirrored, and it looks a bit too narrow, so we can change it. So let's make this a bit bigger, and cursor selected, and select the seeds again, right click set origin to 3D cursor. And now it looks much better. And we can also add a camera so we can see it better. So Shift A and camera, and you can place it. And Alt and R to reset the rotation, and R X 90. And let's go to 0 to see it better. And for the resolution we can change it to 180. So we have like a square. And let's bring it back. And here you can also change the focal length. And we can drag another window. And T to hide this menu and also the overlays and everything else. And now there's a bit too much of a gap. So we can make it slightly smaller. And cursor to select it. And right click, set origin to 3D cursor. And we can also go to this viewport display and compositing guides, and you can check the center. And you have to check the overlays again, and now you see it's the center. And we can align it a bit better. And now we can just mirror everything to the other side. And we also have to do the same with the ceiling. So let's right click and set origin to 3D cursor. And we have to select this edge and extrude it again. And let's select the other objects and make the same process. So we can select the walls. And let's go to mirror. And right click, set origin to 3D cursor. And this is the wrong axis. So the Z axis is the right one. Same process with the door as well. Right click, set origin to 3D cursor. And we have to apply the mirror first. So let's apply the mirror. And right click, set origin to 3D cursor. And let's add another mirror. And it's just the same process. So right click, set origin to 3D cursor and a mirror again. And we have to do the same process with every part. And don't forget to apply the mirror here. And for these ones we have to apply the array modifier. So let's make Ctrl A to apply it, so we have one object. And right click and set origin to 3D cursor. So we can make an array here. So let's make an array. And let's change it to 0 and the Y is to 1. And we can make the count up, and also for the ground. So let's align it to this one. So let's hide the array. And let's make the ceiling come to this door. So let's select these faces and Ctrl plus to grow the selection. And Ctrl plus again. And let's hide the subdivision so we can see it better. So that we don't have any wrong parts selected. So let's deselect these ones here. Extrude it and right click and G and Y. And let's just select this door. So let's select this edge, cursor selected, and this one again. And change it back to 3D cursor and S, Y and 0. And let's bring the subdivision back. And what I forgot is make some details on the ceiling. Just select this, cursor selected. And let's add a plane again. And we can change it back to median point and make it slimmer. And also bigger. Don't forget to apply the scale. And let's make a couple of loop cuts. So maybe 10 is enough. Just bevel these. And E to extrude it. So Ctrl B and just make a smart bevel. And we can give it some loop cuts. Cursor selected. And we can make another plane and make it smaller. So let's make just a shape. So E to extrude it. And let's first place it. So we can select these both objects. And we can also make this longer to bring it to here. Go to 7 and X-ray mode and edit mode again. And we can select all of these vertices. So let's just extrude it. So E and right click and Y. And we can select this object and just add a couple of arrays. And we can make this bigger. So let's make something about this. And let's apply the array. So Ctrl A to apply it. And you can select these both and Ctrl J to join them. And let's also make some lights here. So we can cursor select it and a plane and scale it. And let's move it to here. So X-ray mode again. And let's select these both and G and Y. And next we can go to toggle view to see it better. And we can make one more loop cut here and bevel it. Bevel it like this. And we can select this face and E to extrude it tiny bit. and also these ones just a tiny bit, so we have some details. And let's also match the rotation a tiny bit, and we can change this rotation to the normal, and we can move this a bit down, and we can mirror it to the other side, and right click and set origin to 3D cursor, Ctrl A and apply the rotation. And next we can do one more detail on the ceiling, and let's hide the subdivision, and we can make one more loop cut here and Shift and D and P selection, and we have this object, and we can select everything and just E and Y, and let's select everything and Alt and E extrude faces along normals, and we can bring the subdivision back and also here, and right click and shade smooth. And we can also make one more, so you can just add a plane and rotate it. So we can add some screens here. And let's go to edit mode and make this bigger on the y-axis. And we can make one more loop cut here and select these faces and I again. And we can select everything and give it some thickness. And then select these faces and E to extrude it inwards. And we can also make a bevel, so let's apply the scale. Let's go to edit mode, edge select, sharp edges, and Ctrl B to give it one bevel, so just a tiny bit. So with one segment, and you can change it back to arc, move this back in place, and just rotate it a bit. And now just join these, so Ctrl J, and we can mirror it again, so cursor selected, and set origin to 3D cursor and a mirror modifier, and let's change it to the Z-axis. And next we can just make a bunch of arrays, so we can make the seeds and go to toggle view. And what we have to do, we have to mark some seams, so later we can add a material. So let's go to select and select sharp edges, and let's hide the array so we can see it better. And we don't need these ones on this as well. And we also don't need these ones here, so you can deselect these and right click and mark seam. And once we have that, we can apply the array, so we can go back and let's apply the array, so we can move this above the subdivision and Ctrl A to apply it. And now we have seams everywhere, and we can make another array, and this is the wrong direction, so we can change it to 0 and -1 or 1, and now we can just move this a bit until it fits what we need, so something about this. And let's make the same thing with everything, so we can just make a bunch of arrays as long as you want, so maybe 20, and also here, so you can make this 20, and the door as well, so let's make an array. And let's change it to 20, and we have to change the factor. And let's change it to constant offset, and we have to change these values. So let's make this 0 and the y. So let's make this 2 so we can see what we do. So let's match this to here, and we can make this 20. And also the door, so we can deselect this and select constant offset. And let's change the distance, so let's make this just 3 so we can see what we do. And we have to match the distance to the seeds. And let's also make the same with the walls, so let's make an array and change the relative to constant. And let's also change the y. And let's make a count of 20. And now we see we have to change the door, so we have to change it to another number. And for the seeds as well, so the same. So let's change it to constant and make the x to 0. And let's make the y. And let's change this back to 3. Move the y to until it fits something like this. And we can change it back to 20. And this one as well, so we can add an array. And it's the same process. So the z to 0. And let's change the y. And also the other object, so this one. So let's just move it on the z. and you can hold shift so it is not going too fast. You have more control. And we also have to add a mirror to these holding bars, so let's add a mirror first. And let's select this object, right click and set origin to 3D cursor and change this to Z and an array, and this should be 0 and the Y value. And let's don't forget the constant offset, so the X to 0 and the Y we have to change it. So let's make this in the middle again to about here, and let's make the count 20 as well, and these ones as well, so let's make an array again. And don't forget these objects in the ceilings. And once we have everything, we can move on to the materials. So we can just open this window and change it to shading editor. And let's also change it up here. And don't forget to save your file. And let's start by making the walls. So we can just select it and new. And we can name it walls. And let's make a bump and connect it to the normal and also a noise, and we can connect it to color to the height. And let's click this node and press Ctrl T, and for that don't forget your node wrangler, so you have to go to edit and preferences and search for node wrangler in the add-ons. And next we can connect the object to the vector, and let's make this much bigger, 30,000, and the strength you can put it to 0.1, and also the distance to 0.01, and also the details, let's make it higher, and also the roughness, let's put it all the way up, and also the ceilings the same, and we can give the ground the same material. And for these ones we can give it a metal material, so we can just make the metallic all the way up, and the roughness to a 0.2 maybe, should be enough, and also the other ones. And these ones we can make a new material, and we have to assign different kind of materials, so we have to select these ones. So let's go to toggle view, and we can just press L and you can select all of these. And next we can make this, go to the materials and assign, and we can give this a darker color and also a metallic, and let's make the roughness to a 0.2 as well, or maybe a 0.3. And next we can move on to this one here, so just pressing L, and we can make this a different material. So let's go here to this plus, make a new one and assign it, and we can give it like a rubber material, so maybe like a bluish color, and let's make this darker and maybe not this saturated, and the roughness can be a 0.3. And for these ones the same material, so we can press L to select it, and let's click this material and assign it. For these ventilation I have just a darker color, so just a slight darker color but not too dark, something like this. And for these ones you can make one and call it lights, and we can make it maybe a bit of transmission, and also we can make the emission a bit higher, so maybe a 0.2. Or you can also leave this at 0, and you can go to this value and make it all the way up. And for these ones is the same material as the ventilation. And these ones we can make an extra material, so we can make the metallic all the way up. And we can leave the roughness, and we can make the color a bit slightly lighter. And also for the other ones we have to change it, like these holding bars. So by pressing L, and we can make a new material and select the metallic, and we can just assign it so it looks like this. And for the doors we can give it the same as the walls. And let's also make one more loop cut here, so it is a bit looks more connected. And for the seats we can make a new material, and if you have your Blender kit you can just use a fabric material here. So just type in fabric, and we can click this one here, so the materials. And we can also add a metal to this holding bars, so don't forget to save your file. And let's search for a fabric, so I choose this one, so the blue fabric. And I also change the color a bit because I think it is too dark, so we can add a hue saturation node and put it in here to the base color, and we can change the value a bit more brighter, and the saturation we can make it something like a 0.6, and then looks much better. And you can also change the color here, so you can make something different. And we can also go to the rendered view to see how it looks. So let's go up here. And we need an HDRI and also a light, so let's do that. So we can come here to this dot and change it to environment texture. So I just used one with a cloud texture, so it looks like this. And you can find it in the description if you want to use the same one. And here we see it is not looking correct, so we have to change it as well. We also have to check the face orientation to see if everything is blue. So let's go up here and we can change it to face orientation. And as you can see, some parts are not correct because they are red. And red means inside and blue means outside. So we can go to edit mode, select everything and shift and N. And now it is the right way, and also the other parts. So we can select this and shift and N. And this one turned not blue, so we can do it again. And inside, and also these ones here. And the ground is turned black because these ones were overlapping, so like this. And we have to move it. Let's just change it to the relative offset. And let's make this 0. And this a 1. And this should be fine. And we can press Ctrl B and we can see just this frame here. And we can also make this a bit longer. And next we can change the lighting a bit, so we can move the HDRI, so we can go here to the world and press this node and Ctrl T. And we can just rotate it on the Z axis like this. And we can also change it on the Y value, so it looks something different. We can also select the whole thing and just press S and X, so something like this. And next we can add some flowers to the ground. So we can just select the ground, come to our asset library, so we can change this one here to asset browser. This is the free plant library, you can just download it for free. And the link is in the description below. Select these grasses here, so the wasteland one and also the second one. And let's make these bigger so we can see it better. And let's press M and put it in a new collection and name it grass. So let's select the ground and go to the particles and add a new one and change it to hair. And next we can come to this render and change it to collection, and we can change it to our grass. And let's apply the scale and also do some loop cuts here so we can see the grass. And once you change it to your collection, we have this grass here, as you can see, and it is too big, so we can make it smaller. So here in the render and the scale. And don't forget to check also pick random, so it is not the same grass. And I think we have to apply the array, so we have the grass everywhere. So let's go here and let's change this back. And we can make this above. Make Ctrl A to apply it. So we can make this a bit bigger. And also don't forget to make the random scale a bit, so it looks more natural. And we can come to the children and check interpolate it. And let's do for the render maybe just 100. Now we can also change the material of it. So I think it looks not as nice. So what we can do, we can just steal another material. So we can come back to this asset browser and we can change this to the wasteland meadow flowers and bring it in your scene. And let's go to our shader editor. And here we have the material of the flower. Select the grass and just change it to the flowers. And now you see we have another material and also the other one. You can either leave it at this color or you can change it to a green. So we can just copy this node just in case we want a color. And now we can just change it to a green. Change the hue to something like this. And let's make it darker so it looks more natural. And also the other colors, we have to change the hue. So let's change it to a green and also a darker one. And let's make the saturation and not too dark. And also the other one, I think, is a bit too saturated. And we can also add a sun if the light is not enough. So let's make Shift A and add a sun. And change the strength to something like 8. And let's rotate it, so R and Y. And also move the camera a bit more inwards. And maybe it is too bright, so we can change it to 7. And you can also make the HDRI a bit more darker, so if you think it is too bright, search for some flowers, so maybe these ones, so you can just drag it in, choose the floor again, and let's go back to our particle system and add a new one. And we can change the render to object, choose this eyedropper here and select the flower. And now it is too small, so we have to make it bigger, so let's increase the scale. And also let's go to the children and interpolate it, make this a 30. And also don't forget to change it to hair, because I didn't change it to hair, that's why we didn't see it. So it is way too big, so let's make it smaller. And also it is too much, so let's change this to a 5. Or maybe even a 2. Or let's just leave it at a 1. And here we can make it a 30. And let's make this much smaller. Change the scale in random scale. And you can also add some more plants, so maybe this one here. And make the same process. Just select the ground and add a new one and change it to hair. And you have to change the render to object. So here, object. And eyedropper and plant. So let's make this a bit bigger and go to children and interpolate it. And once you have enough plants in your scene and you're happy with everything, we can make a test render and see how it looks. And for the samples you can make it 250 and with denoise, and don't forget to use your GPU compute, and the rest you can leave it as it is. And for my color management I have AGX and very high contrast. Once we have everything we can go to render and render image. So I hide all of these plants from the viewport so that it is more faster. I also added a light here in the back, so we can do this as well. I added one light here, so we can come here, choose a vertex, cursor selected, add a plane and rotate it and make it bigger. And let's just move this here to the front, cursor selected, and we can select a area light, R, X and -90. And let's make it bigger, move this a bit more to the front. And let's go to our shader editor and use nodes. And let's go to rendered view so we can see it better. And we can make it maybe a 3. And you can change it here as well. And now we can just do some adjustments. So we can come here to adjust and make the vibrance a bit up. We can also make the temperature a bit different and maybe highlights as well. And also the smooth all the way up. And for the grain, you can also add some grain, it looks much better. So maybe like 50. And you can also add maybe a little bit bloom or the glamour. And just tweaking the colors and everything until you have something that you like and you're happy with. And then it will look something like this. And what I also did, I used a vignette. So just something like this, so that the focus is more in the middle. And that's pretty much it for this tutorial. I hope you enjoyed it and that you could learn something. And please leave a like and subscribe to my channel, and I see you in the next one. Bye!